Hello, good afternoon. This is the third roundtable on the third Patients Pre-Congress of OAFI. Here is Barcelona, and we are in the middle of the morning agenda. In this third table, we will discuss a very, very crucial point, in my feeling, is how the regulatory agencies can interact with patients. And to treat this important issue, we have three persons with a lot of knowledge on the matter. First, Nathalie Bere. He has been working since 1998 at EMA, now in Amsterdam, before in London, and has been responsible for many years for the engagement with patients and consumers, and has been for years testing and implementing different methodologies of how to include the voice of the patients in all the aspects of the regulation of drugs. Then we will have later on Anna Hyde, Vice President and Advocacy for Access at the Anne Palmer Foundation, the Arthritis Foundation. She's the Vice President of the Arthritis Foundation. And finally, Dr. César Hernández, Head of the Drugs and for Human Use at the Spanish Medicines Agency, AEMPS. Then we start with Nathalie Bere. Thank you for coming. Last year was first time I think I met you. It's a pleasure to see you again, and the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. And as you mentioned, then I'm going to be explaining to you how EMA is engaging with patients and the kind of journey that we've come along. The first few slides, I'm just going to highlight what EMA does. I think, and we've heard a bit earlier on as well, FDA seems to be a bit more of a household name, but EMA, as you know, is the European regulator, so it's very important to understand that for most of the medicines that are going to be used in Europe, they have to come to the EMA for an authorization. But that's not only what we do. We also provide advice on the development of medicines. We then assess and approve them. We monitor their safety and the follow-up afterwards. And of course, we have to make sure that we provide full and clear information to everyone who needs to know about the medicines. In Europe, there are two ways that medicines can get approved. You can either go through the centralized procedure, which is at EMA, or you can go to the national procedure, where you would just go to one or two national agencies. Actually, there's not a choice. For all of these medicines, everybody has to come to the EMA. This is what we call the mandatory scope. So it's most medicines, they have to come to EMA for approval. But there are some therapeutic areas where they can just go to one or two countries, maybe to test it out if they want to. The benefits of the centralized procedure are really that companies then submit one application to EMA. EMA does the assessment. If the outcome is positive, automatically it's approved in every EU member state at the first time. Obviously, it's up to the pharmaceutical companies where they want to make it available, but it's automatically able to be in any country. It also means that the safety monitoring is also across Europe and simultaneous, and it also means that the information is automatically translated in all the EU member state languages. So it's a kind of one-stop shop for everything, then applicable across Europe. It also means that we have a wide network of experts to call upon across Europe. So we have all of our different experts from the different countries, from the different national authorities, working then with the EMA, so you'll see our committees have members from every member state, and then of course we work with the European Commission, who gives the final stamp on all of the work that we do. This is what the EMA is. We relocated a few years ago from London. We are now based in the Netherlands, and the way that we work is that we have about 800 staff, but then we have various committees looking at all the different aspects. So we have the CHMP looking at the medicines, we have the Pediatric Committee, the Advanced Therapy Committee, all these different committees looking at all the different aspects of the medicines evaluation. And each committee has representatives from every member state, and they all equally vote. So it really is a European work and opinions. So more to the important part of my presentation about stakeholder engagement. We wouldn't be able to have proper outcomes if we didn't engage and involve all of the stakeholders that are involved in medicine. So of course we're talking about the academics, healthcare professionals, industry partners as well, but also patients and consumers. And this is what is going to be the core of my presentation about how EMA involves patients and carers and consumers into their everyday work as we have today. You can see on this slide that it didn't happen overnight. It really has taken us quite a while. And you heard from somebody earlier on, this started when we opened the doors in 1995. The HIV community came knocking on the door asking to be heard. We were developing drugs in that area, and they said, well, you need to listen to us and what is important to us. And we did listen, and we learned a lot. And so from that time, we then started saying, okay, well, how can we do this more formally? So we started a working group, then that became a working party. We then developed a dedicated department at EMA, and you can see the various steps here. And each time we developed new ways of engaging with patients, we did it with them. So every time we were going to do a new pilot in something, we engaged with that patient community, tested it, did questionnaires, everything, until we kind of got it right from everybody's perspective, and then we launched it. And that's been the way all along until today. You can see here we have opportunities for the patients to get involved along what we call the medicine's regulatory life cycle. So we have pre-submission. So this is all that happens before the medicine gets all its data and it comes up for application, the evaluation, and then the post-marketing. So they're involved in all of these different activities in various different ways. Here you can see a little bit more exactly how they do it in practice. So they are voting members on many of our committees, on our management board, and when they do that, they represent their whole community. Other times they get involved, like we have a patients and consumers working party, then they will represent their particular patient organization. So it could be disease specific, or it could be like an umbrella organization, and then they come representing their particular community. Other times when the patients get involved in their actual specific medicines evaluation, they do that as an individual with experience of that particular condition that we're talking about, because we want to know not just from anyone, we need to know with people who are living with that condition. It might be a carer if it's for children, but we need to have people with direct experience of that they can then share those day-to-day aspects with us, the unmet needs, what they face on a day-to-day basis, what the current treatments do offer them, what's still missing, what are they looking for in new treatments, what are they willing to accept in terms of risks versus the benefits. So all of these things contribute to our scientific discussions. They provide us with the data that we don't have, which is collected during the clinical trial by the pharmaceutical companies. So we need these two aspects as complementary data sets. These are the things that we've developed which kind of make the engagement work. I think on the one hand, you have to have different engagement methodologies. Sometimes we want to do a long survey or a questionnaire, and we send that out to the whole patient community and try and get as many responses as we can, so it's really representative. Other times, we'd rather have a small, dedicated expert meeting with maybe 20 people, and we get into an in-depth discussion, or like a focus group, and that you can really induce in-depth discussions more than you could do, say, in a survey. And we do patient preferences, things like that, which is a kind of more scientific-based methodology. And on the other side, of course, we need to make sure that they are properly supported throughout this whole process, because you couldn't involve patients in a rather scientific discussion without preparing them. They don't need to understand the science part of it, but they do need to understand, okay, what is this medicine? What are the issues about it? Why are we having this discussion? What are the issues with the data that the committee is looking at? What is my role in that discussion? So we need to properly support them, and people like to be supported in different ways. Some people like to just read an information sheet. Some people like to watch a video which shows them how it works. Other people like to have a phone call and we run through everything. So it's about having those different ways tested and tried with the community. And of course, without all of these, we wouldn't be able to do any of it, because, and again, it's on a voluntary basis. We have a really wide network of patients and consumers that we've developed now over the years. Again, it's not something that happens overnight. You need to really work together with them. You need to gain their trust so that they understand that genuinely you do want to involve them and listen to them. And as I said, like, without them, we wouldn't have been able to do anything that we've done today. We have a system of eligibility, so patient organizations can register with us. We just check certain criteria to make sure like they are non-for-profit, they are transparent in their funding, they really are engaging with their patient community, things like that, and then they are listed on our website. But you don't have to be a member of an organization to get involved with us. You can also register. We have a database of individual patients or interested people who can register with us. They can just register to receive information on a particular area, any information, press releases, things like that are coming out in an area, or they can register and say, look, actually, I'd be interested to get involved in this, and this. And so it's tailored, and we contact them for activities in whatever area they're interested in. And we have our Patients and Consumers Working Party, which is made of 22 European organizations. We meet about 4 times a year at the EMA, or obviously it's been virtual recently, but we hope next year to be going back to face-to-face. And also they are kind of the platform that we discuss a lot of general topics, medicine shortages, COVID, AMR, all these kind of things. It's our kind of platform with the organizations. This was just to say, obviously you've heard all about OA, but interestingly, earlier this year, we did have a medicine which was being assessed for pain in OA, and we reached out to OAFI and involved 2 patients in the discussion about this medicine. And again, it just shows how important it was, and they were able to join the discussion and know what happened. This is just something as well I thought I would highlight. I'm not sure if you're aware of the Innovative Medicines Initiative. This is a European-wide platform. It's not managed by EMA, it's managed by IMI, but it's a platform which is a non-for-profit, and you get all of the stakeholders on the same platform. So industry members, academics, healthcare professionals, patients, etc. And there is this one which is ongoing in relation to OA, and I understand that they're going to be setting up a database. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but I thought I came across it, and I thought, oh, obviously topical for my presentation today. So obviously they publish everything, and they have a website, so you're very welcome to go and have a look and see where they are in that initiative. So just to summarize, at EMA, we do fully engage patients. We've seen the benefit of this engagement. They bring us information that we don't have. We equally then share information that they don't have. So it has to be a win-win situation. We do continually ask them, did you feel you learned something? Was it a positive experience? It can be quite daunting to come into a regulatory agency, and some who come to the actual committee meetings. It's a huge room with a lot of people, and we need to make sure that it was a positive experience for them, that everyone gets something out of it. And we definitely feel that our outcomes are improved because we've got that perspective from the patients. And I think it's also variable. There are some discussions which lend a lot more for patient input, where we don't maybe understand so much what it's like being a patient, and other times maybe it's a lot more known. So again, it depends on the case by case, but it's important to have them there at the table at every time, whether they're going to say a little or a lot. So I think I'll finish with that, and very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathalie. As in the previous roundtables, we will wait for the end of the 3 interventions for the questions and answers. So the next speaker will be Hyde. As I said before, he's the Vice President and Advocacy and Access of the Arthritis Foundation. This year, we have not the President of Arthritis Foundation, Ann Palmer, but we have the Vice President. So it's a pleasure, Anna, to have you here. And also, a bird told me that you are an expert also in the relationships with FDA. So that's quite important for us to know after the EMA position, which is the point of view of the Arthritis Foundation, and at the same time, the FDA point of view about the patient's participation in the life of drug process. Thank you, Anne. The floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Before I get started, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, good. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Well, I'm pleased to be here, even if I'm a few hours away in time difference. I wish I could be with you in person, but maybe another time. I am glad to go second because there was a lot in the first presentation that really resonated with me in our experience, both as the Arthritis Foundation, but also just with the FDA generally in the United States. So I have just a handful of slides. I'm not going to read them word for word, but this gives sort of from the FDA's website itself what they're responsible for. They have a very wide mandate because it's not just the drug supply. They are responsible for approving drugs and the safety and efficacy of them, but also animal products, food supply, cosmetics, and more. So we, of course, at the Arthritis Foundation care very much about drugs and devices in particular. And this is just a little bit about what the FDA does to engage patients and patient groups. They do have an Office of Patient Affairs, which manages patient engagement across a number of ways. And we hear from them often. They do workshops and webinars. Sometimes it's specific to a particular news item, certainly a lot around coronavirus over the past couple of years. And we'll do webinars on various updates to particular disease areas and specific issues or ways that they want to actually, improve patient engagement. They do a lot of patient education materials, of course, and sometimes we work with them on those things. There are just a couple of examples on this slide about ways that they've, over the past few years in particular, tried to put together very patient-friendly materials. They have formal processes. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. And then advisory committees, of course, they have an arthritis advisory committee, which we follow very closely and often nominate patients to sit on that advisory committee. But that committee has the opportunity to review drug applications before the approval process happens. So that's a really important mechanism as well. So I want to spotlight the patient-focused drug development and spend most of my time talking about this. And again, I'm not going to read the words on this slide, but essentially, the FDA recognized quite some time ago that it's important to engage patients for all the reasons that you just heard. And interestingly, this process around patient-focused drug development that's become formalized really started within the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. And this was an act that was started in the 90s for the same reason that we just heard about the EMA, that the HIV/AIDS community was extremely active in pushing the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, on the research side, and then the FDA on the drug approval side, to do more to sort of meet this crisis that was happening in that community and be responsive to patient needs. And so they started this formal process of really dealing with the backlog of drug approvals that were happening at that time. So this User Fee Act helped to increase the pace at which and create some standards and structure around how drug approvals from the first application through approval happen. And in the last, so we're on round 7 now. It has to be reauthorized every 5 years. And in PDUFA 5, I believe that's sort of the shorthand, they codified this patient-focused drug development sort of concept. And at that time, it was a very sort of pilot phase. They had committed to doing, I'm going to say PFDD for short now, but committed to doing disease-specific patient-focused drug development meetings where they brought in patients and patient groups to talk about their perspectives on the disease and their needs, and getting a better sense of what their benefits tolerance is. They have conducted 30 since then. So obviously it's been successful. And in PDUFA 6, which is when I first got involved, when I started at the Arthritis Foundation in 2014, they had realized the sort of benefit of doing these and decided to do more. And so in PDUFA 6, they authorized 20 different meetings, but there were some groups whose disease areas were not part of this list, including arthritis, incidentally. And some groups, patient groups, took it upon themselves to do their own, what we now call externally led PFDD meetings. And because those ended up being really successful, and other patient groups wanted to replicate that process. The FDA in the last reauthorization decided to sort of work on putting together guidance and fit for purpose tools for patient groups who wanted to do these externally led meetings. And they all culminate in what we call voice of the patient report. So it just summarizes the findings and recommendations from those meetings. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, because we have done 2 of those at the Arthritis Foundation. And then they are also continuing to develop guidance on how to incorporate patients into regulatory decisions. And we always say that patients should be involved from beginning to end, starting in the, even in the clinical trial process and the selection of endpoints. And they should have a seat at the table to help guide, what outcomes matter to patients, what patient preferences should inform the drug development process. In fact, just maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, the FDA released guidance for input on the collection of real world evidence and real world data, which continues to be a challenge, because where do you collect real world evidence from? Patient registries, perhaps, but not every organization has the resources to have patient registries. And how do you standardize that data? So a lot still to be done here, but they've put out a lot of guidance documents on how to collect comprehensive and representative input. That is also a challenge when we know that it is a very heterogeneous disease, and the population for any therapeutic area also has a lot of heterogeneity within it. So how do you make sure that you're being representative? And then clinical outcome assessment, again, going back to what outcomes matter to patients. They started this pilot project just a few years ago and plan to, in this next round, PDUFA 7, to expand the program. So again, it's shown some success. Okay, so our experience with the FDA, like I said, we've done 2 externally led PFDD meetings, one on osteoarthritis in 2017 and another on juvenile idiopathic arthritis in 2019. I had the pleasure of sitting in on the JIA meeting, and it was really amazing to me hearing patients talk about their experience with the disease, and in some cases, seeing kids who had cycled through every drug that is indicated for their disease and not finding one that's effective for them. And so in some cases, you're seeing patients who are at rock bottom and they don't know what to do, and their disease is getting worse. And you can understand by listening to their story that their risk tolerance is going to be different, perhaps, than someone else who may be newly diagnosed and is just starting their journey. So seeing patients at different stages of their journey was incredibly powerful for me. And it was obvious to me sitting in the room that it was also powerful for the regulators and scientists who were in the room as well. So we have 2 voice of the patient reports on these experiences, and they are on our website if you are interested in taking a look. But I think that continuing to do these types of meetings will continue to be a priority for a lot of patient groups in the future. Okay, so we just recently, our most recent interaction formally with the FDA was really around osteoarthritis, and this has been a priority of ours for a very long time, trying to find ways to bring drugs to market for osteoarthritis, and again, bringing the patients in to talk about their experiences. So just this last summer in June, we hosted a meeting bringing in patients, but also scientists, and talking about the whole range of challenges and limitations around osteoarthritis drug development. We brought in the regulatory perspective, the scientific perspective, and discussed a number of challenges, not the least being the selection of endpoints again. And it was very informative. And I think for the patients who were part of it, who we talked to afterwards, it was very empowering to them to be able to share their story and their patient experience and talk about, in many cases, how subjective it can be, thinking about, how do you measure pain, for example. And then, of course, everyday regular business, we have formal comment letters. There are always opportunities to comment anytime a federal agency puts out a guidance document, for example, and throughout this PDUFA 7 process. And in fact, over the course of the next couple of weeks, I will be writing our comment letter on the goals that the FDA has put out around this next PDUFA iteration. We nominate patients for the advisory committee, as I mentioned. oftentimes will testify at public hearings when they are reviewing a new drug. Oftentimes we'll find patients to testify about their experience. And then of course, we are very interested in the feedback loop where we are relaying important news from the FDA and updates on arthritis therapies to our patient community. So in closing, I had just key takeaways and future directions. This is all from my own personal experience working with the FDA and with our patient community, is that like you heard before, it sounds like there are a lot of common themes here. Patients are a critical stakeholder for informing drug development from the beginning. And I would argue that it's not just having them at the table, but having them involved in, if you're doing a survey to patients, have they been involved in the actual design of the survey? Not just are they taking the survey, but are they involved in the design of the survey? That's maybe a direction that I would love to see go a little bit further. Patients, the approval process and the drug discovery process should be informed by patient needs and what matters to them. Real world data is really important. And despite the limitations and challenges, that should continue to be really important in terms of standardizing, and not just standardizing, but normalizing the idea and importance of collecting real world evidence. And future priorities will include how, of course, to get a disease-modifying OA drug to market, but also how to capitalize on, digital, tools, and how to make clinical trials and other processes in the drug approval and discovery process more patient-friendly. We know a lot of limitations happen with, patients being able to take time off of work or transportation issues to get to a clinical trial site. How do we make the process such that we are meeting patients where they are and then being more inclusive and representative? So those are some of the things that we'll be focusing on in the future. And I really appreciate the time here and look forward to the continued discussion.
Thank you, Anne. As with the previous speakers, at the end of the three presentations, we will have the opportunity to have questions and answers. Now is the turn for me to introduce to you to a friend of mine and a colleague, Dr. César Hernández. He is a rheumatologist, has been working for many years in Hospital Clínico San Carlos in Madrid. He has also a long career as a researcher in the field, but in 2009 he became the responsible for human drugs at the Spanish Medicines Agency, and I had the honor to work with him for many years, some of the best years of my professional life. So César, a good colleague, a good friend, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. Adelante, César.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation that I'm very happy to accept in this double condition of former rheumatologist and actual head of Department of Medicine for Human Use. I'm going to try to share my screen, but okay, here it is. Okay, I think that in this incredible journey from the ideas to the marketing authorization of medicines and even more to the market access, I think that patients are more interested in the market access than in the marketing authorization. They see the marketing authorization as a previous condition, but I mean, to have a marketing authorization without access to the market is it's a non-comfortable situation for them. But in this incredible journey, we have a lot of regulatory tools, and in order to make the medicines, any product to progress in this journey. And we have early discovery, we have horizon scanning, clinical trials, early access programs, scientific advice at the national level and centralized level. So a lot. I don't want to go one by one on all these activities, but a lot of activities where the patients may be engaged and where the patients can participate. But for me, it is very important, and I would like to explain that, especially in Europe, where we have this network of regulatory medicines authorities, including the EMA, we need to work from the micro level. So where you know, the ideas are born, and where the new products arise in the. So a lot of activities in this innovation, research, and pre-approval activities at the national level and in the centralized level for sure. You know, we have the institutional activities at the national competent authorities in the Spanish agency, for example. Then we all have to go through this tight part of the activities that are within the scope of the EMA and the European Commission, the authorization for centralized authorized products. And then, and this is very important, we need to, I used to say, land these products in the different countries, in the different member states, again, by promoting access and by engaging patients in these HTA activities and post-approval activities like pharmacovigilance. So I think that it is important to see the network in Europe as a whole, because I think that we all work in the same, you know, in the same procedure in the end, that is make this idea, make these ideas to progress in the development up to the marketing authorization, but even more to the access in the countries. So what my first question is, at least in Spain, where do we see that patients may be involved? I think everywhere in all these activities. So we are not going to discuss this. This is out of date. It is not time to discuss this. I mean, the problem is how we can incorporate the patient perspective. And I have to say that, I mean, and coming back to my previous clinical experience, I mean, not all patients want to be fully engaged in this. So we need to you know, to provide the tools, so patients that want to be fully involved, so to participate in the full range of activities can participate, can do it, but also that many other patients that want to, you know, to maintain another ways to be involved or to be informed, that can also you know, feel comfortable with the things that we do. And I think it is important to reflect on what do we need from patients. I mean, for sure, I think that what we need from patients is their own experience. So, and I mean, this is my wife always tell me that I do not repeat this example. I mean, Virginia Woolf is one of my favorite writers for my wife, and she show me that what was a room of one's own, and in this text I find that the essence of what the patients would need. I mean, what Virginia reflect on what might a woman writing in the early 20th century, what do we need to be a writer? And they and she had the conclusion that they need 500 pounds per year and a room of her own. So and I applied this to the patients. I mean, the patients need their own space that is only for patients. It's not the space for the healthcare professionals, not for the managers of the health system, not for the agencies, not for the industry, but their own space in all the landscape. And then what they need is as much food as possible to make their own decisions based on the information. For sure, they also need money to be organized and to dedicate time to all these activities, which in the end it's one of the bottlenecks. But they also need a source of trusted information to make their own opinion and to be able to fulfill the function. So how this how we try in the Spanish agency to maintain this level of cooperation with the patients? Well, opening to them any of the activities that we have in this panorama. So you know, first of all, with the participation in the innovation office, I think that another point that is important to consider is that it's becoming more and more frequent that patients organizations have their own money to spend in research, and sometimes they need also to have this I would say independent opinion on on which uh, projects or proposals can be more suitable to really render what they want, that is for example a new medicine. I mean, unfortunately it is not always easy for the patients to decide on how to use the money that they raise. I mean, sometimes they come to the agency and we have an open discussion with them on different projects, and we offer I mean, I wouldn't say our opinion on that, but we try to guide them on which is the particular status of development of a given product. We also, for sure, they can participate in the scientific advice, and we have still a few number of patients that are very well trained to participate in this, for sure, in clinical trials. As has been explained, I think that the presence of the patients in the individual patients in the evaluation of any kind of authorization procedure will be very important. And then after the product is approved, I think that it is important, very important for them and for us to count on them on the what we call the therapeutic positioning, that in the end is a kind of report that trying to show what is the benefit, the comparative benefit of a given medicine, in the taking into account the rest of the medicines that are available for patients, and for sure in pharmacovigilance. And I think it's very important also, and as has been already mentioned, in the shortages. I think that shortages has become a problem for all of us, and the way we can inform patients that something is that a given medicine is not going to be available for a certain time. The way we deal with the patients and we provide the information can make easier to deal with this kind of problems at the national level. We have different sources of information, so the Spanish registry for clinical trials, and for sure our portal for medicines, where we have the different medicines that we have approved. We have the information for those that are handicapped, for example, or those who have some restriction on a given like gluten or something like that may cause allergies. Also, we have all the information on shortages that I think, again, it is very important. So in the end, and this is my last slide, I think we have three different activities. We try to engage in patients in clinical trials. For sure, they participate already with the industry in the design of the clinical trials. Sometimes they are the sponsors of clinical trials, and we support in these innovation offices the activities of the patients as sponsors or as funders of the sponsors. For sure, they it is in the law, they participate as members of the ethics committees on the different ethics committee, and they have this trusted source of information on where they can find the centers where a given clinical trial has been ongoing. And in the assessment of the results, I mean, we have had consumers representatives in the committees in many years ago, but only from 2016 patients representatives are seated as observers in the committees, and now since 2020, I think that they are not just as observers, but as members of the committees. So we are also working in a committee mirroring at the national level what pretty much the same that the EMA has with the consumers and patients committee. And from 2013, we involve regularly patients in what we call the therapeutic positioning reports as HTA, in order to favor to make easier the access to the medicines. And to do this, we have a lot of training sessions I mean, we participate for sure in any invitation like this as OAFI, but we also organize many times with Hyde, but also with other associations of patients like the Federation for Rare Diseases and others. These training sessions at the agency in the Spanish agency, in order to promote a mass of people that can participate in all these activities, not only at the Spanish agency, but also to be prepared to jump into the centralized procedure and to participate also in all the activities of the network. And I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, César. And as being a chairman, one has some privilege. Before any question of yours, I have at least three. I have been participating for many years in EUPATI summer courses here in Barcelona and in FEDER, Federation of Rare Diseases, for years, and I have a bias. The bias is that participation of patients and patients' involvement is different in Nordic countries than in southern countries. My experience say that perhaps for idiomatic questions, Spanish patients are more reluctant to participate than, let's say, people from the Netherlands or so. Which is your opinion about this bias?
Interesting. I mean, for us at EMA, we
closer.
Yeah, we try to, because we're obviously covering all of Europe, so we try to have a wide variety of patients from north and south. To be honest, actually, our biggest challenge is the language.
That's it.
Yeah. So obviously, we need to have people that can speak English. Our working language is English. And that is the challenge, and it's true that generally up north they are more find it easier to speak English, but that's not, that doesn't mean that the southern should be excluded. And I think we have to find ways. I mean, generally that's where we rely on the patient organizations, and often the patient organizations, they then support their members, and they can try and maybe find one or two members who do speak English. And then once they get involved, and then they share and disseminate the information. And a lot of the patient organizations, like you're saying now, they are very experienced, and they translate some of the information into then the local language and that. But it's a challenge.
I think I agree. It's an important barrier, because it's not only that somebody translates for you. I think a patient engagement needs that a patient is able to read scientific literature, and that's a barrier. Okay, then first question. Second question is an anecdote. In late 90s, I participated in the EMA at the headquarters at this time in Canary Wharf with discussion to approve a drug for multiple sclerosis. And I saw the discussion at the FDA, and it was really astonished, because it was a compound, Avonex, interferon for multiple sclerosis, and at that time I saw at FDA a person with a lady with a wheelchair crying in front of the committee, saying that her life was awful. She was divorced. She was abandoned by all her family. He could not work because of this terrible disease. And now you have the miracle for my life. So I thought that I was in front of a Hollywood movie, but it was not. It was FDA discussion. Again, that's a bias I have, but probably is not the case, but I saw it. So can you convince me that this is not the case anymore?
Shall I just say, I mean, I think, we have to take into account that, everything that occurs in the life of somebody with a particular condition has a big impact on them. And, of course, they're going to be affected in many different ways, and they're going to have those emotions that come with it. And of course, they get an opportunity to come in front of the regulator, and of course, they're going to want to share, how awful it is for them in all different ways. And I think it's important that we do listen to a certain extent, but I think it's our role as well as a regulator, if a patient is coming to get involved in a discussion, that we have a discussion with them beforehand and we explain to them how best they can contribute in a constructive way to the discussion we're having. We can say, mention how difficult it is you living with this condition and how it's impacted you in a short way, but then have a look also, what is the discussion we're having about this medicine? What is the data about the efficacy and the safety, which I will obviously brief them in lay language. And so tell the committee why you think this medicine would be good for you, despite whether it works well or a little bit or it's got some safety issues, but basically contribute something that the committee can use in their decisions and in their assessment discussions. So I think it's about listening to all the perspectives. I mean, you're saying about bias. I think we have to acknowledge, there is these difficulties for everyone with these conditions, but equally we need to help them help us better.
I think it's a matter of emotion and rationale. Anne, would you like to add something?
Absolutely. I think there's a tension between thinking about access and the ability for a patient to access a particular drug, the individual patient level versus the population level. And there have been a couple of fairly recent examples at the FDA having to deal with this tension, where one was for muscular dystrophy and one just recently with Alzheimer's, which I'm sure everybody's aware of. And the patient organizations in those cases pushed for approval of those drugs. And when they were approved, there was a lot of backlash and discussion about whether the data really supported the approval. So you had the scientific community on one hand, but then you had the patient community on the other hand because of stories like that. And I mentioned my own example, seeing stories like that too, where you have people who are desperate, who have hit rock bottom, they have no other options, and they're willing to try just about anything. So how do you balance that tension? And there is that kind of emotional component, but also the need to have solid data and the scientific community as well behind a decision. So it's a tension that we certainly see and are aware of and respectful of in all of the work that we do.
Can I just add?
Yeah, of course. Go.
No, two comments, quick comments. First of all, I think that I fully agree. We need to hear everyone, and this is not too different than being, a clinician in clinical practice. I mean, you need to understand what the patients are saying and try to find the best solution or offer to the problem. Second, I think it's a matter of knowledge. In the end, we also need to offer the patients the possibility to grow in the knowledge. I mean, we have an anecdote 4 months ago, maybe, with 2 patients being the most supportive individuals in the decision, in our decision about a clinical trial in the agency. We didn't see the reason to approve that clinical trial because we thought that they were not seeking the right population. And when we discussed this with the company, and we have also the patients, two very well-trained patients, they were the ones who argument in favor of not approval of this clinical trial. I think that, I mean, once everyone is sitting around the table with their own voice, I think that we need to hear the voice of the patients. It doesn't matter if it's too emotional, like you are mentioned, or you know, very pragmatical, as I was saying. And it is important that they are represented, but for that they need to be also. They have to have access to the right information, not the right information. When I say the right information, it looks like it's my information. No, open to all the information so they have their own opinion on a given process.
Do you want to act or something?
I was literally going to say that experience has shown us that when patients do have all the information, they don't just want us to approve anything. If they can see that the data is limited, that there's, you know, the safety is not good, they often agree with our recommendation not to approve, because they can also see that it could jeopardize future development, it could jeopardize future reimbursement. So it's not the old thing where people assume that patients want anything no matter what.
Okay, then somebody, yeah.
I'd just
Ali.
like to follow up a comment that Nathalie made. I completely agree about the language issue. I'm actually in the Approach project that you mentioned earlier. So our experience was that the patients who spoke English from the Netherlands and Norway maintained their engagement throughout the project. They participated in all the meetings, and they also participated in a publication in one of the journals that Kieran mentioned, research engagement. The patients from Southern Europe who couldn't speak English dropped out more often. There was more turnover, and they also didn't participate in the publication. So English language, the ability to speak and understand English language appears to give them the advantage of better, more sustained engagement. The other point I'd like to make very, very briefly is about seriousness of diseases. So we recently heard about the approval of a drug from Biogen for dementia. My understanding is that the budget for that drug is almost as much as NASA, the operating budget of NASA. But in terms of the real benefits that it provides to patients, it's still very much unknown. So for some diseases where there is such a great unmet medical need, there's probably more likelihood of taking a risk, both from a patient perspective and the regulator's perspective, compared to those other diseases that trail further behind. That's all I had to say.
Yes. Giuseppe?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate this table. Thank you very much for your expertise and your explanation. And about the patients that involved in the, in health authorities, an English issue, we are promoting in the OAFI, as Nathalie Bere say that, for example, in one evaluation of the drug in DEMA was to patients from OAFI. We are taking care about that patients with us, with level of good English, they can work together and they can participate. I think this is one issue that we are concerned, and we are doing a lot of activities and promoting this, in order that to try to make a balance that the Nordic countries and in the case of the south of countries, That means that we are making a lot of attention about that, and also the participation in the journals. I mean, we are making a lot of progress. That I think Xavier probably in the next years will be changed and will be more the equilibrium in between the north and the south from Europe. But in our case, this is one issue that we take care, and we have a project for that. That this kind of patients, they can make the voice, and I think it's very important. That's all. It's only we're improving that. Thank you.
No, my question was referring to a very old experience many years ago, because I am quite old. But one last question from Sharon over there.
Hi, thank you for the talks. Just from like a publishing point of view, one thing that came up, at least in the consultation period with editorial board members, was the use of non-English language abstracts. I know you guys have also talked about it before. I think we do know and appreciate that English is the first language of science publication, but from a feasibility point of view, how would or should we go about translation into other languages? Do we need to partner up with, let's say, patient organizations, and whose job should it be to translate to other languages? If anyone has any ideas, or have OAFI thought about this, or EMA perhaps?
We are working in this direction. I completely agree with you, Syria. I mean, I think this is a very important issue, no? Especially for people that are not the native language English, no? That they can do some work in this direction also, no? Because in the end, the most important is the experience that they have as a patient, how they can do their voice, and how can be an important partner about the discussion of the drugs, no? Because in the end, they go to the drugs to the patients, no? I think this is another issue that is very important, and we take notes about that. We take care.
I mean, what are this EMA, because it's super important, what are the working languages of EMA, and do you have resources and funding to translate into other languages?
So EMA's working language is English, but all of the outcomes are translated in all EU languages. So when a medicine is approved, not only the package leaflets obviously are translated in all languages, but we have like a summary of the medicine's evaluation, which is then translated. And we even do one part is like a Q&A, more lay language part, so that also patients can understand it. And that is then translated in all languages. In terms of involving patients, I mean, we're still trying to see, like, for example, we do public hearings sometimes on the safety committee. And for that one, we come and ask the patients to come and present in front of the committee, and it's broadcast. And we felt that, is really daunting. And so we offer simultaneous translation for those speakers so that they can present in their own language, and that we would then translate it. But to do that for every activity that patients are involved, it's just not feasible,
We have 21 official languages at the EUA. 21, yeah. No? Okay, more questions, and the last one, I'm sorry. Okay.
In my experience with the European AIDS treatment group, the chair was for a long period Nikos Dedes, that is a Greek person.
I know him.
And Nikos is very clever. Now there is my friend Giulio Maria Corbelli, and we are from the south. It depends by the maturity of the organization and how is thought the activity. Since the beginning, the European AIDS treatment group translated text in language that could be accessible for patients, as well as ACT UP made in United States. I remember the flyers about cyclovir, AZT, DDI, and so on. So it's a spread of information that help people to be aware and able to listen his body. It was mentioned before, Virginia Woolf. Virginia wrote a wonderful book that is called, the title is On Being Ill. That is a specific experience of a listen body and how to create story about this experience. And experience is a relationship between ourself, the body, and the time. That is experience, but experience is also a basis for expectation. Expectation in front of a switch of a body, of a drug, means how can evaluate the difference between previous experience and when and what I want to achieve. And this kind of crucial moment of the life of a person living with a pathology can understood only listen and asking through a story. If you think medicine as a narrative structure, Byron Good at Harvard University set up a school about narrative medicine. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, patient had now the opportunity to add this structure of narrative in science in order to realize the better outcome. In English, there are 2 words to say a clinical condition, disease. That is how medicine define the condition. Illness, that is the experience that the subject make living with, and sickness, that means how the collective, how society build up the condition. The bridge between these 3 different environments allocate resources and make able a drug to be recognized as approved and value for money when it is in the market.
Thank you, very nice. I'm afraid that we are out of time because it's 15 minutes delay. So we end up here with the 3rd round table, and we wait for the 4th one that will be soon in 2-3 minutes when we change the things, okay? Thank you very much to all the presentations. It was very, very interesting, and see you soon, I hope. Bye.